She's an invaluable member of my staff, that's for sure. And Jamie Sims from Liberty Systems, who's our vendor, that will be doing the training for you today. I say this every time we do a training because it's true. We would be unable to do the elections without you, the election judges. We have too many precincts, we have too many polling places, etc., to do this by ourselves. It would just be impossible, so you are a valuable and important part of the election staff as well. It never fails. We always seem to be short of election judges this time of year. We have a lot of snowbirds that go south, but I just can't tell you how much you are all appreciated for what you do. I know it's a long day, I know it's little pay, but we couldn't do it without you. For most people, election day is just that. It's election day. Elections for the county clerk staff is basically a year-round job. From the online voter registration, all of the registrations that come through throughout the year that we process, to setting up this training. I think Lisa has been working on this since probably November. We started taking applications for voter vote by mail in December 18th. So it's just election day is much more than election day. But once again, you are all greatly appreciated. You've all been chosen by the chairman of your political party to serve as election judges, and you have been commissioned by the circuit court. Every judge, even those that were just recently named, I had commissioned by the circuit judge. Although some of you have more experience than other election judges, in Shelby County we don't have any lead judge or anything like that. You know, other counties kind of have a lead judge in their precincts. We don't, so you're all kind of like a team effort, group effort, and you all do the job together. If you have any problems with any election judges that are late or don't show up or any kind of problems, please make us aware of it because we're not out there with you. So if there's difficulties or issues, please call the clerk's office and let us know. In Shelby County, nobody can register anybody in the polling places. So that means on election day, if somebody comes in that is not registered to vote, they've got two options. One, they drive to the county clerk's office and they register and vote. The other would be if it's 6:30 and you're in Sigel or Oconee or even Weequa, you're not going to make it to the county clerk's office. I don't want to deny anybody the right to vote if they're adamant about being a registered voter. Then what you need to do is you will probably this election, not so much probably, more so in November, you will vote them provisionally. Jamie will go over that, but the one important thing about provisional ballots, they don't go in that black box. They go in an envelope, and then the voter has to prove to us later that they are indeed a registered voter. Okay. I'm sure you guys have read the news, but your job, like I said, is vitally important. Please make sure that all ballots are initialed on that little line right up in the corner. There was an election in Sangamon County that was decided by pulling a ping pong ball out of a hat because they threw out some ballots because of where the judge initialed the ballots. Also with our new machine, which I know you guys haven't seen, but our new touch screen, I cannot say enough things about it. It is awesome. If you can use a tablet, you'll be able to use that. But it does print out every voter that votes this machine gets a ballot. They're going to put their ballot, which Jamie will go over, in this privacy cover, and you will have to initial the back of their ballot. I don't anticipate that you'll have a lot of people using this first time around, but they will get a ballot. It will have to be initialed. So just once again, please make sure that you initial all ballots. Also this election. At a conference I attended in January, we discussed electioneering. As you all know, there's no electioneering in the polling places. This means people can't come in with buttons or hats with slogans or t-shirts or anything. I don't want you guys to have to be confrontational in the polling place. You please, if somebody walks in with a hat or a pen or buttons, and oh, I'm sorry, you can't wear that in the polling place. Just leave it by the door. You can pick it up on your way out. If you have any trouble with that, call. But like I said, we discussed trying to not make it confrontational, just trying to say, hey, just leave it over there. When you're done voting, you can pick it up and be on your way. If anybody at your polling place who call and say there's a problem with your polling place or a conflict that day, please get a hold of the clerk's office as soon as possible. We have to change any polling place 9 days prior to an election. It has to be approved by the county board, published. The polling place has to be evaluated for ADA compliance, and every voter in that polling place has to get a new voter registration card. So it's not an easy situation when we find that out. We are going to have a conflict this election with Shelbyville 1 and 2. You will not vote in the gym, you will vote in the teen center. You may have to do some curbside voting. I just want to make you aware of that. We found out about this conflict last minute, and unfortunately, we're just going to try to do the best we can. And we've got this election, we have a November election, then we have an election in April 2021, the consolidated, which I know you all love because nobody shows up in November. Because of that, I am going to strongly look at clustering. I don't want to say consolidating because they will not be consolidated, but I am going to look at clustering polling places for the consolidated election. With a 20% turnout, I feel bad. You know, the law states I have to have a polling place in each township. The law states I can't cross township lines, so it won't be everybody. But if you can think of a place possibly where you could be maybe consolidated with another, please reach out and let me know. I know some of our precincts have few registered voters, so if I could put 2 of those together, that would be great. It would just be for the April 2021 election, but I'm going to try to do this basically as a cost savings, like I said, with a 19-20% turnout for a consolidated election. I'm going to try not to use every precinct that we have. So once again, thank you all for attending. Thank you all for your willingness to serve. I can't say enough. You are greatly appreciated, and we want to keep you with us as long as we can. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, and thank you all very much.
Thanks, Jessica. Good morning. How are you this morning? Yay, everyone's awake. And I have 2 goals today. The first one is to keep you awake for the next 2 hours. And the second one is, when you walk out of this room, you're going to be so confident with this equipment. You're going to be so excited about it that you're going to set up a countdown calendar waiting for election day to get here. You will absolutely love it. Now, you've all used the tabulator in the last election, and this is just supplementing that. The nice thing about this equipment, well, there's many nice things, but all of your totals are in one place. This machine here is just a glorified, expensive ink pen. Okay? If someone chooses to use this, I'm going to go through it and show you how to use it, and hopefully you'll stick around afterwards and play with it. When a person chooses to use this, they're going to make choices. It's going to print the ballot out. They can look at it, verify that's exactly who they wanted to vote for, and walk over and insert it into this machine. So one machine is holding all of the totals for this election. All your elections going forward, actually. Did everyone sign in as you came in the door? Great, that's their record that you attended today. The nice thing about a PowerPoint presentation is that it's interactive. So if you have any questions at any time, stop me. We'll talk about it right then and there. And if you have a cell phone, I'm going to ask you to put it on vibrate. I'm a grandmother, so my phone is never far away. But if the phone rings, just step out the door if you don't mind before you answer. So what is your job as an election judge? Is to protect the right of voters? Is to ensure that the election process is fair and in accordance with all election laws. So we're going to go over a few of those guidelines. Is this how you feel on election morning? I hope not. Get a good night's sleep the night before. Whenever I travel, can you see over on that side of the room? Good. Whenever I travel, I always set at least 2 alarms. I set the alarm on my cell phone. I have the front desk call me. I set the alarm in the room. I know it's overload, but I never want to oversleep, and you don't either. So get a good night's sleep, set at least 2 alarms, and hopefully on election morning, this is not how you will feel. Instead, you're going to jump out of bed, grab those ballots, and head off to the polls. My father used to call that being full of vim, vigor, and vitality. Arrive at the designated time. What time do you get to the polls on election day? That's a.m., not p.m. Earlier is better. Get there early, get organized before that first voter comes in at 6 o'clock. If any judge is missing, be sure to pick the phone up and call them. If Mary is broke down along the road at 5 o'clock in the morning, somebody needs to be out there looking for Mary. But if you can't get a hold of her, call the clerk's office. I guarantee if you're at the polling place, the courthouse lights are on and somebody is home. Call and find out what happened to Mary. Maybe Mary really did call in for the day and is not going to be able to serve. Hopefully they'll have some alternates they can send out, but if they don't, you, the other judges, have authority after 6:15 in the morning to appoint a replacement for that missing judge. The key is they must be the same party affiliation as the missing judge. So, if Mary is not going to be able to serve for the day, and Mary was a Democrat judge, it's your job to convince that next Democrat voter that walks through the door how much fun you're going to have. You're going to eat all day long. You get a visit with your friends and neighbors. If you can convince them to stay, swear them in, give them a meal, they'll serve, and they'll be able to get paid for the day just like you are. You will have a list of all of the judges that are going to be serving with you in the front of your binder. Now, I have to start off by telling you, I go to many different counties. For this election, I'm doing 38 classes. Now, in all of these counties that I go to, this is the most organized one that I have ever been to. They have step-by-step instructions telling you what to do, how to do it. They give you notes. But in the front of this binder, you'll even have a list of who your judges should be. So, if you get there on election morning and someone doesn't show, you have their name to be sure and call them. Is anything missing? Get familiar with all of your supplies. Your supplies basically come to you in a red bag. And in this red bag, you have supplies, all of your signs for setting up. You have the forms, the supplies you need during the day. You have the supplies that you're needing after the polls close. They're even designated in those time frames. There was one polling place. I worked for the Christian County Clerk's office in Taylorville for 16 years. And when I left the county clerk's office, I went to the State Board of Elections for 16. And before I retired, I contacted the man that always ran my elections at the county, and I said, I'm going to retire at the end of the year, and I think you need to hire me. Just part-time at election time. This is my favorite thing to do. And he said, I think I do too. So back when I was at the county, one election morning, the judges called, and they said, we can't find a particular form. And I said, I've sent everything to you by time frame. Before the polls open, during voting hours, after the polls close. They said, well, we just emptied everything out on the table. Well, it's coming to you organized. Open it in that time frame to keep yourself organized during the day. Also, there's an envelope over your provisional supplies that we're going to go over. And you have a goodie bag, pens, pencils, markers. I voted stickers, name badges. If you've been an election judge in your precinct for a long time, those voters coming in, they're going to know you. But put your name badge on so they have a name to associate with that face, okay? So go through your supplies. Oops, don't like the looks of that. Setup envelope, okay? She not only has everything organized, she has your notes step by step walking you through everything, telling you what to find where. Your blue bag, it's here under the table. And I'm going to go through it after the polls because she even has it organized what needs to come back in here on election night and how it's supposed to be sealed. Then these are the items that are in your red bag. You have an expanding file. When you come in on election night, you're going to come in, drop all of this stuff off downstairs, and you're going to be taking this upstairs to Jessica's office. And there's a checklist on the outside of what needs to be in there, okay? So, refer to this all day long. Now, your old equipment, how many of you were judges, have been judges at least 10 years? 15? 20? 25? 30? 35? 40? 45? 50? 55? 55? Let's give her a hand. Give all of you a hand. That's admirable. You know, you should write a book about all the changes that have occurred over all of those years. Yeah, you should, because it'd be really interesting. I interviewed an election judge in Mattoon several years ago, and she had been an election judge since she was 18 and she was 65. And she went and explained all the changes that had occurred over all of the years. Well, in the last equipment you had, as the machines were running their tapes, those tapes were winding up in the machines. Not anymore. When the machines run a tape, they come out. So as those tapes come out, immediately go to this black binder, and there's even dividers organizing you which tape goes in which folder of that binder. Okay? So another great tool for being organized. Tells you all the categories. And you notice this one is for the combined precincts. If you have one precinct all by yourself, you'll have a binder. If you have two precincts that are combined in the same polling location, you will share the black binder. Lisa, correct me at any time if I'm wrong. Election judges make the call. Just like Jessica said, you serve as officers of the circuit court. You have all been commissioned. You're the sole authority in the polling place, the sole authority in this campaign-free zone that we're going to talk about, and you are responsible for everything that goes on in the polls on Election Day. Before the polls open, just like you see on TV, you're going to raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of judge of election. Poll watchers are those individuals that can be in your polling place before the polls open. They can follow you in the door at 5 o'clock in the morning. They can be there anytime, all day long, or they can even stay after the polls close. To be a qualified poll watcher, a person just has to be registered to vote any place in the entire state of Illinois. Now, what are the chances of someone coming from Chicago into Shelby County to be a poll watcher on Election Day? Don't be surprised. You never know. There's a lot of candidates that are running. So they just have to be registered any place in the state. So where do they get their credentials from? They can get them from the clerk's office, or they can also get them from the State Board of Elections. And on that form, they need to be appointed by either a candidate, a political party, a qualified civic organization, state civic organization, proponent or opponent to a proposition. And they must have a separate credential for every precinct that they go into. So if you are in a combined location where you have two precincts in the same location, if a poll watcher comes in and they're only interested in asking questions and paying attention to one precinct, they need one credential. But if they are involved in that other precinct, they need a separate credential for every precinct that they're having any interaction with. So they'll walk in the door, they'll surrender that credential to you, you're going to look at it. Now there's two kinds of credentials. One is for a candidate themselves. For the candidates themselves, they're appointing themselves at the top of it, and then it's signed off at the bottom by the clerk or the Board of Elections. But otherwise, regular poll watchers, they'll have 3 signatures on it. County clerk, State Board of Elections. They'll have the appointing authority. Who are they a poll watcher for? And then right across the bottom, they're going to sign it and have their name and address. So why do we have poll watchers? What are their rights? They truly have the right to observe anything and everything going on in the polling place on Election Day except how a person is voting the ballot. Secrecy of the ballot must always be maintained. They have the right to come and go all day long. They have the right to call attention to any incorrect procedures. They have the right to challenge the qualifications of a person's right to vote. But you, the election judges, will always make the final call. Now, when they come in with these credentials, you're going to collect them, put them in the envelope. The outside of that envelope is where they sign in, sign out. They can come and go all day long. But you're going to keep those credentials, and they get turned in with the rest of your supplies on election night. Now, besides poll watchers, there's another group of individuals that can come into your polling place. They look pretty official, don't they? Law enforcement officers, representatives of the State Board of Elections, State's Attorney, Attorney General, and the Election Authority's Office. The difference with these individuals, anyone that walks in that polling place will come in and check with you first. You're the boss. They'll tell you who they are, why they're there, and these individuals will show you their IDs and badges. The difference is you can't keep those IDs and badges. When they leave, they get to take them with them. you'll have two forms of equipment. In the very back of your binder, you have a sleeve that has all of your keys and your barcodes in it. And you'll have two forms of equipment, the tabulator and the touchscreen. First, the tabulator. How many of you remember the song, "A Picture Paints 1,000 Words"? Good, I'm not the only one here from the 70s. Well, each piece of equipment has step-by-step pictured instructions telling you how to turn it on in the morning, and the back side tells you how to turn it off at night. Pretty awesome. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is check the ballot box. I hope when the class is over that you will all come up here and look at this, get comfortable with it. I'll do my best to show you as we go through it, but hands-on is always better. Now, I have an election loaded on here, and the election is between the Cubs and the Cardinals. So it's all a play election. But I grew up in East St. Louis, so you can tell who my favorites are. On the back of this box, there are two keys, locks. The back of the machine comes totally off. First thing in the morning, you're going to verify that that box is totally empty. Now, there's a couple ballots in it right now because I've been playing this morning. But in the morning, you're going to verify that there's nothing inside. Now, you notice how thick this back is? Why is that? This is your auxiliary bin. State law requires that on election day, from 6 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night, voting never stops. Whenever you're dealing with electronics, you have no control over if something should happen. If for any reason during the day that machine should go down, you'll spin the whole box around and voting will continue into this auxiliary bin. You'll see there's just a slot at the top. You want to move that key out of the way? There we go. A slot at the top where people will continue voting, dropping their ballots in that auxiliary bin. But just remember, if a ballot goes in that auxiliary bin, it must stay there until that night, after the polls close, after everyone in line is voted. Then you'll take those ballots out of there, feed them to the tabulator, and track your numbers one last time. Okay, and then that other key lock shows you what the inside of that auxiliary bin looks like. This is where I just dropped that ballot in. Totally separate compartment. Okay, you'll lock it back up. Now, when you get to the polls on election day, this tabulator, all of this will be here. You're not lugging any of it out to the polling place, and you're not bringing it back on election night. But this tabulator, it's the cream-colored unit, will be in a black padded bag. Okay? You're going to unzip the bag, pick this unit up, slide it on the front of this box. And when you slide it on the front of the box, there's two locks right here. That keychain that I have has one blue key. That blue key works everything. It works the back of the box, the black box. It attaches this unit onto the black box so it won't slide off or fall off. It's also the same key that is used to lock the cover on this machine when you close it down at night. Okay? So you'll slide it on, you'll lock it into place, then you'll lift the screen. Just like a bicycle has a kickstand, the screen has a kickstand so that it slides out so the screen is visible, a better angle for the voters to see. You'll plug the tabulator in. Right behind the screen is the plug-in. You'll plug it in, and next to that plug-in is the toggle switch where you will turn it on. When you turn that on, it takes 2 or 3 minutes for it to boot up. Okay? And when it does, it asks for your password. Your password is located in the front of your binder, right in the very inside cover. There's a sticker and it says what your password is. It's the same password that you use in the morning, same password that you use at night, and it's the same password that's used in every single precinct. Your password is Shelby1. Pretty easy to remember. You're number 1 around the state, right? Shelby1. Then you'll hit enter. As each piece of equipment is turned on, they have an opening report. You'll look at that opening report. You're going to verify that the date and the time is correct. And every tape, as it comes off the machine, you will take over to this file, find the slot that it goes into, and put it inside. But I'm just going to pass them around today so you can see what they look like. Now, before I do that, you notice that there's lines on here? What do you think those are for? Where else in a one-day period of time does someone ask for your autograph 100 times? But it's important that every time you see a line, you sign. Good way to remember. See a line, sign. Then you have a zero report. When the machine gets turned on in the morning, this machine, it prints out a zero report. You're going to look at that to verify every race, every candidate, every issue on that report is at zero. You have done your job. You've made sure there's no ballots in the box. You've made sure that the tabulator is not holding any votes. Everything is zeroed out. You're ready to open the polls and start allowing voters to vote. Now it's going to print out a separate zero report for every ballot style. So I'm going to let you pass those around also. And at the bottom of those, you see some lines. Whenever you see a line, sign. Every single election judge needs to sign the bottom of every single tape. Then the machine is set up, ready to take ballots. Now for the touch screen. Setting the touch screen up. If you'll notice on the floor, when it comes to you, the screen is down, the lid is on, and it looks like a blue suitcase. So you undo the latches, undo the lock, take the top off, and put it under the table out of the way for the day. Okay? When you go to set it up, first you're going to plug the cord in at the back to the wall. Prepare the tablets. Now, the tablet is this right here, and there's a kickstand on the back of it too. When it comes to you, it's flat. You'll slide it into place, put the pin in to adjust it at the height. It's good for the voters. Then there is a keypad. There's a storage here in the back. A keypad that's in Braille for voters that might need it. And there's also headphones. Federal law requires that you have one of these touchscreens in every single polling location whenever you have federal races on the ballot. Okay? And right here on the front of the screen, there's a little picture of headphones. That's where it plugs in at. What this allows is it allows a voter to come in, put the headphones on, it will read them the entire ballot, and then they use the keypad to make their choices. This keypad is in Braille, but it's also very visible. They can increase the tempo, speed it up, slow it down, increase or lower the volume, go forward, backward, make their selections, go up and down. They can even repeat, or it can pause. Okay? If you have time and you want to play with it, feel free to come up and play before you leave. Then you power it on. Right next to the plug on the back is the toggle switch that turns it on. The screen comes up and says, confirm that it's election day. Yes. And it's a very pleasant machine. It even welcomes you. Now, on the front lower corner of this is a screen where it will read the barcodes. You will receive barcodes for every different ballot style. Now, when a voter comes in to vote on election day, it's not a guessing game. It tells you exactly which ballot style to give a voter. It's printed on their application to vote. You have pre-printed applications, so every voter that comes in, you're going to find alphabetically their name, pull their application out. It will tell you in that top right corner which ballot style to give them. Now, what's different about this election is it's a primary. So you're going to ask every single voter, do you want the Democrat or do you want the Republican? Plus, you also have some referenda on the ballot this time. I picked up one of these wonderful specimen ballots. Aren't those beautiful? If you look it over, it tells you the referenda that are going to be on your ballot this time. In the city of Shelbyville, you have an advisory question. And in the village of Cowden, you have a liquor question. Okay? So those are the areas where there's going to be a referenda on the ballot. So what does that mean? That means when a voter comes in, they're going to choose either a Democrat or Republican ballot. Now, on those Democrat and Republican ballots, both of them have the question already. But if you look back and remember, there's a lot of voters that never will vote in a primary because they don't want to designate party. So if they come in and they're really interested in voting on this question, they have another option. They can ask for a nonpartisan ballot. So when they get that nonpartisan ballot, you know what's on it? Only the question. No candidates are on that ballot. Okay? So you're going to have a separate barcode for every one of those options. If you have one ballot style, you're going to have, let's say, ballot style 1, you'll have the Democrat version and the Republican version. Ballot style 2, you'll have the Democrat and the Republican. And if you're in the precinct that has the nonpartisan, you're going to have an additional one that's only for the question. Now, your Democrat barcodes will be in green, your Republican barcodes will be in yellow, and your nonpartisans will be in white. Did I have a question back here? Yes.
I thought that with the privacy issue, we weren't supposed to ask them, Democrat or Republican, they're supposed to check mark it on the form that they sign, which ballot they want.
Okay. No. When a voter walks in, you have to ask every single voter which party they want. Think about it. You have poll watchers there. Those poll watchers are entitled to know the name of every voter and which ballot style that they've requested. So that's public information. Okay? So when they come in to vote, they have to tell you, Democrat or Republican. And you're going to announce their name loudly enough so that the other judges can hear, and any poll watchers that might be there, they can hear that also. Okay? Good question. So, voter comes in. You're going to find the correct ballot style. You're going to take that barcode, and in this bottom left corner, you're going to slide it in. Okay? As you slide it in, you'll hear the machine beep. And make sure that it loads that ballot style. This was ballot style 1. It loaded the ballot style. So I'm going to walk through voting one of these ballots just so you can see it, and then I'll review it again in the screen. You hit the start button. It brings up a race at a time where I can go through and make my choice. Now, again, I'm a Cardinal fan, so I'm going to vote for Molina. Well, I've changed my mind. I'm going to take Molina off because it won't let me overvote in office. So before it'll let me vote for someone else, I have to undo Molina. Instead, I'm going to vote for Fred Bird. I really like that Fred Bird. So a screen pops up. I'm going to type in F-R-E-D space B-I-R-D and hit enter. And look what it does to that ballot. It throws Fred Bird right there along with those other candidates on the ballot. Very visible. And then I can use the arrows and go on to the next race. Or I can always go back. Or I can just scroll and it'll take me through the different offices. I'll vote for the individuals that I'm interested in voting for. And I don't have to vote for all. This is my ballot. I can vote this ballot any way I choose. And when I'm finished, I'll hit the done button. And it brings up a summary of everybody that I voted for. Every race that I've undervoted, it prints it in red. So I can go back and really make changes to any of those. Didn't vote for governor? I'll go back and vote for Dizzy Dean on that one. But the rest of them, I'm happy with how I voted them. So scroll through it, and then hit the print button. There is my ballot. And what do you know? President of the United States is Fred Bird. So, the voter has the option to look over that ballot, verify that truly is who they want to vote for. Now, at this machine, and also when you hand out the paper ballots, also hand every voter the ballot privacy sleeve. You offer it to them, but you can't make them take it, okay? So if it's a paper ballot, You'll put it just over they'll place it just over the ballot because the ballot box judge only needs to see red initials in that top right corner of the ballot, correct? So you'll also have some of these at the touch screen. So if the voter pulls their ballot out of the touch screen, here on the front of this ballot privacy cover, there's a little flap. It shows them where to lay that ballot, okay? So they'll lay their ballot in here and close it. Now the difference is, when you hand out a paper ballot, you've initialed it before you've given it to them, right? This is a roll of paper in this machine. There's no way you could have initialed this. So they get their ballot out. They look it over. They verify that's truly everyone that they really wanted to vote for. And then they bring it up to the ballot box judge. If you're at the ballot box at any time on that day, remember, every ballot that's narrow like this has to still be initialed, okay? And Jessica wants them all initialed on the back. Hopefully they'll use the privacy cover, but even if they don't use the privacy cover, you can't see through them. So if they walk up to the ballot box, explain to the voter that they need to turn the ballot over. There's a little ledge on the back side of this. You'll keep a red pin there all day long. And the ballot box judge will put their initials on the back of the ballot, and the ballot will be fed in. Now, that ballot will go in that machine in all 4 orientations, just like the paper ballot. It will read in like this, like this, like this, or like this, the same way as the ballot out of here. And for every ballot that goes through, it's increasing the number by 1. It's keeping track of how many ballots have been tabulated in that machine. Okay. Absolutely.
On that, the touch screen, if they decided to say they already printed out the ballot, is it just spoiled like the others and put it in the envelope?
Good question. Anytime a voter marks the ballot, whether it's a paper ballot or if they've used the touch screen, Illinois law requires a paper trail, so they have that ballot in front of them to look at. If they look at it and realize that they've made a mistake, you hand them a spoiled ballot envelope. They'll fold that ballot up, put it in the envelope, seal it, and bring it back to you. Okay? They'll spoil it, and they can start all over, whether they want to use a paper ballot or whether they want to use a touch screen.
If they spoil enough, you still have to initial the ballot on the backside.
You're not going to touch that ballot. You're going to put it in this envelope. They're going to put it in this envelope. Nobody can see how they messed that ballot up. And then you're going to get this entire envelope. What you will do, though, is you'll go back to their spindled application. Everyone that votes has to apply for a ballot. That's where the application comes from. Okay? So once they've applied for a ballot, you spindle it. You'll go back to the application that is already spindled, and at the bottom there are several little boxes. One of them says spoiled ballot, received another. Okay? Good question. So the touch screen is set up. Here is the same screens that I went through so you can see them. The names are all printed very clearly. If someone decides to do a write-in, a keypad pops up. You'll type in the name of the person that you'd want to vote for. And when that name is typed in, it throws that name right in with all the other names right back up for that office. It'll go through all the referenda at the end. When you're finished, you'll hit done, and then it gives you a summary. It makes you review every choice that you've made. If you're happy with it, fine. If not, you can go back and change any of them. It tells you which ones you've undervoted, but you can change any of them. When you're finished, you'll hit done, and then you'll hit the print button, and you see what happens. It prints that ballot out. Okay? Yes? Absolutely. You have no control over what somebody is doing. But if it's not a valid write-in, it's not going to be counted. They've just wasted their time. Okay? Know your different ballot styles. They're designated by code, by color, and by number. It is so important that every voter gets the right ballot style. Of everything I tell you today, this is the most important. It's not a guessing game. It tells you very clearly what ballot style to give every single voter. So on election morning, you get to the polls, you pull out all your ballots, and you lay them across the table so that you can understand what the differences are. What's the difference between ballot style 1 and ballot style 2? Maybe it's different county board districts. Okay? And then you have Democrat and Republican of both those ballot styles. Okay? Then, since this election has federal races on it, you're also going to have another ballot style called federal ballot only. What I suggest you do is you take those federal ballots, you wrap them up, and you hide them. You know where they're at if you need them. But there's only a few instances where you will need them, so don't even confuse yourself. Get them off the table. One election morning, now I'm going back about 25 years, the judges called in and they said, we're out of those federal ballots. I said, that is not possible. I sent you 25 federal ballots, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, there's no way you could have had 25 voters eligible for those. And they said, well, we gave those out first. You know what that means? That means every voter that had voted that morning had been disenfranchised. Okay? Now, that was punch card days. Anybody remember punch card? It was the strip with all these little holes. You'd put it in the little booklet, turn the page, punch out your choices, turn the page, punch out your choices. Then you'd pull it out, look at it. Yep, that's a lot of votes that I voted for. You'd walk over and put it in the ballot box. Well, those voters had voted everybody that they voted for, not realizing that they had been handed that ballot that was only going to count the federal races. So that's why I said, take those federal ballots and get them off the table. Now, these are a lot more visible. These ballots are actually pretty awesome because every voter, they can look at these and see every single race, the names of every race. They're darkening the ovals. Okay, these are much better than punch card were. So they can actually see the ballots. Yes?
Are there two types of voting then? You can vote by ballot or by touchscreen?
That's exactly right. It's a choice. Okay. How many brand new judges do we have? Quite a few of you. Yay! I love it. Well, I'm going to, just to give you a heads up, I'm going to go over a lot of information, but don't let it overwhelm you. Okay? They will never put 5 new judges in a precinct by yourself. You will be working with experienced judges, so don't get overwhelmed by all of this stuff. Okay? I have to go over it all, so it's a nice refresher course, but again, don't be overwhelmed. Know who your valid write-in candidates are, and this comes back to your question. You will get a list of who all the valid write-ins are. Now, I'm still going to talk about write-ins and explain write-ins, but for this election, you have 0 write-ins in Shelby County. So that will eliminate a step. But I'm still going to talk about them so you understand how they work on all of the equipment and on your forms. So how does someone become a valid write-in? If someone wants to be a write-in, they have to fill out a form. It's called a Declaration of Intent to be a write-in candidate 61 days before the election. Why? Because 61 days before the election is when Jessica is ordering her ballots. When she orders these ballots, she has to know which one of those races she needs that write-in line on. Can you imagine how long this ballot would be if she had to put a write-in line on every single race? Pretty long. So, everyone that wants to be a write-in has filed 61 days before the election at least, saying they want to be a write-in for the election so she can get her ballots ordered. And you will always be given a list of who all those write-ins are. None for this election. At 6 o'clock in the morning, you're going to announce the polls are open, unlock the doors. You can replace those missing judges in your precinct after 6:15 in the morning, and you're going to collect credentials from all poll watchers that might be there. You will be provided a list of everyone that has already voted early, directly in Jessica's office. Anyone that's voted by grace, they've gone in, updated their registration, and voted right then and there. Or they've requested a vote by mail ballot. We want everyone to vote, but only one time. So it's important that you know who those individuals are. So when you get to the polls on election morning, you have those lists. Take those lists and compare them to your list of pre-printed applications. Get some Post-it notes and stick on them. Maybe fold the corner of those applications back. Designate which one of those individuals have already voted. So if someone should walk in the door, you've got a heads up. You're not going to look 3 or 4 different places. You're going to have one record in one place. You're going to have a Post-it note or something on that saying that person has already voted. So why don't you just rip them out and throw them away? Because what if it was John Smith Sr. that had voted and you pulled out John Smith Jr.? Leave them all in here until you need them. But just flag them in a way so that you know that your other list showed that that person has already voted in some form or another. Election judges, remember to rotate positions during the day. It reduces the appearance of fraud. Plus, if Mary is a no-show for the day, and Mary is the only one that has ever handed out applications, somebody else needs to know how to move into that position and take over. And if you routinely just rotate positions during the day, you'll all be familiar with every step of the process. Also, you act as a board, majority rules. If someone comes in to vote and their right to vote is being challenged, you, the election judges, are going to vote whether you're going to uphold or overrule that objection. You will make the final call. And you all have equal authority, just like Jessica said. There's no such thing as a head judge. Now, you have judges that have been judges for 50 years. You're going to look to them. Those are seasoned judges that are going to have a lot of the answers. You name it, and they've probably seen it happen. So you're going to go to them for advice. When it comes to making decisions, you are all equally have the same authority. So what if a voter's registration cannot be found? The voter is challenged by a poll watcher. The voter insists that he or she should be eligible to vote. Or the voter comes in and says they applied for registration down at the driver's license facility, and if you don't have their records, it must be your fault. Who are you going to call? It's not Ghostbusters. You're going to call the clerk's office. Why? You only have the information in your precinct for just your precinct, but when you call the clerk's office, they not only have county-wide information, they have access to the State Board of Elections website, which is every registered voter in the entire state of Illinois. So, by calling them, they're going to track down what the situation is and try to resolve the problem right then and there while that voter is still in your precinct. Judges Station 1. If you've worked as an election judge and you work in your own precinct for very long, you're going to know a lot of these individuals when they walk in. And voter walks in and you're going to say, well, good morning, Alice. How are you? It's so nice to see you. But you're not going to say, do you still live at 623 East Stevenson? Because that way you've just told her everything she needs to tell you to verify that the records are right. So it's great to say good morning. Welcome them. Call them by name. But every voter that walks in that room must state their full name and their address. How else will you know that their information is the same? No matter how long you've lived in your precinct and how well you think you know everyone in your precinct, there's no way you can keep track of who's gotten married, who's gotten divorced, who's living with who's had a fight and moved out. So every voter has to tell you their name and address, and you're going to look on here to make sure that that is still where they live. Make sure they've not already voted. Again, if you've checked that list and put Post-it notes or turn those over, you're going to have that record. Yes, sir.
You also ask to see their voter's card.
If they tell you their name and address and it matches there, no, you cannot. You only ask that if there's a problem or if there's a question. Or on your list of registered voters, there's a code that says ID. What does that mean? People can now download a form, pick it up at post offices. They pick it up any place, usually. And it's called a voter registration application form. They fill it out and mail it in. The problem is they're not reading it first. Because if they would read it, it states that they must enclose 2 forms of identification that verifies their name and address. And do you think they all do that? No. So what does that mean? That means those forms get to Jessica's office. She has to load them in the computer, but she tells you that they still need to prove who they are and where they live. And in those situations, if it says ID required, then those individuals you can ask for identification from. Now, a lot of people might come in at the polls on election day and they might need to show that ID. And one identification that they don't think about is the registration for their vehicle that's outside. Most people drive to the polls, and most people are driving their own vehicles. I can go out and look in my glove box, and I've got a registration that shows my name and address, and it matches where I live. So that's one government form of identification that a lot of people don't think about, that they probably have with them. So make sure the application is complete. And then, let me back up to that a minute. You'll notice on that application, it's filled out with their name and address, and it's also a scanned copy of their signature. So when that's verified, they're going to sign that line, and you're going to compare that signature they sign against that signature right below it. Are any of us signature experts? No. When I was a senior in high school, my government teacher was really into getting 18-year-olds registered to vote. And if you would go to the courthouse, get registered, and come back and show him a receipt, he would give you extra credit. And I was all about that extra credit. Okay? Well, I can guarantee you that my signature when I was 18 is a lot different than my signature at 65. And a lot of us, that's the case. So if Mr. Smith comes in and his signature is a lot different than it is on that application, but you know Mr. Smith lives next door to you and he's lived there for the last 40 years, you're going to go ahead and let him vote. But also in your supplies, you have a form that you're sending comments, questions, suggestions to the county clerk. I don't remember if it's a yellow or a pink form. But on that form lists that Mr. Smith's signature needs to be updated, because if Mr. Smith came in and voted, they now currently have his most current signature. So when the election is over, they can scan in that current signature. So at the next election, it truly will be a lot closer. Okay? So give it your best shot. Again, we're not signature experts, but you can usually find something that looks familiar. And take in consideration if the person is 95, that their signature might be a little different. That's the advantage to being election judges in your own precincts or close, because you're going to know a lot of these individuals. Again, ask party affiliation. Now, you might have voters that come in and you ask them, would you like the Democrat or the Republican ballot? And they give you that deer in the headlight look. Send them to the wall. Now, why do I say that? Because on the wall, you have posted all of the signs, and you've also posted your specimen ballots. These beautiful specimen ballots that are back there, that's one form you could use if they don't send you more. But have those on the wall, because if a voter comes in and they don't know if they want the Democrat or the Republican, they can go to the wall and look at those specimen ballots. And if they look those over, they're going to see the names of people that they really wanted to vote for. Then they can intelligently come back to the table and tell you whether they want the Democrat or the Republican version of that ballot style. Make sense? Judges Station 1, offer a demonstration to every single voter. You have a demonstrator ballot sheet that you're going to have laying right out on your table. You'll be surprised how many voters come in that have never used these paper ballots before. Maybe they're young, maybe they've always, used touchscreen, maybe they come from other states where they don't do it the same way. But this demonstrator ballot, you're not trying to influence them, because the candidates are Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, John Kennedy, Dwight Eisenhower, and Franklin Roosevelt. You're basically showing them how easy it is to darken the oval with the marker that is in this bag. Even for the demonstrator? Yeah, okay. The markers.
They will be using ink pens to vote their
The ballots, right.
Yes.
But
We forgot to replace those last time with new equipment.
okay,
So voters will be using a black ink pen to vote their ballot.
to vote.
Yes.
But for this, it's laminated. You'll pull out that marker, make the choices, show them how easy it is to darken in the oval. There's Kleenexes in there. You wipe it off and reuse it. These last for years. But good point. When you're ready to vote the ballot, you have a black ink pen. Black ink pens are used to vote the ballot. Red ink pens are used to initial the ballots. So you'll announce the voter's name, and I've already gone over this. Announce that name loudly enough that the other judges and also the poll watchers can hear that name and party being requested. You'll pass the application down the table to the verification judges. Also remember that if someone comes in and there's a problem with their registration, they can all go to the courthouse, update their registration, and they'll vote while they are there. Judges Station 2, the verification judges. You're going to look through, verify, and locate the voter's verification record, compare that signature and address, determine the correct ballot style, initial it. You can hand it back to the voter, but normally you just pass it right on down the table to the ballot distribution judge. They're going to check that application for initials and ballot style, spindle it by party affiliation. You're going to have a separate spindle for every party. A spindle for every person that's requested a Democrat, a spindle for every person that's requested a Republican, and if you're a precinct that has a nonpartisan, you're going to have a separate spindle for those. Okay? Each spindle starts with number 1 at the bottom and goes up to the highest number on top. So each spindle is numbered consecutively individually. Judges Station 3. This is that ballot distribution judge. When you're handing out the ballots, the voters truly have a choice. In most cases, they're going to use the paper ballots that they've used for years. You'll find the correct ballot style, initial it in red ink, and send them off to the booth to vote. When they're finished, they'll come back, and they'll be inserted into the tabulator. Or they can come over to the touch screen, and I showed you how to set it up and let them get started on that.
Is there, like, here,
Yes, there will always be a ballot box judge standing at this location. All the more reason that you have to have one is here is because these ballots aren't initialed. But even the paper ballots, you should have always had a ballot box judge to make sure every ballot before it goes in gets initialed. At one of the classes last week, somebody said, so what's the big deal if it doesn't have initials on it? Think about it. When an election is over, if you have two candidates running for the same office and one candidate loses by a vote, he's really going to be irritated. And he's going to wish anything that he could change the results of that election. So any losing candidate that's within 5% of the vote totals can go back and ask for a discovery recount. That means they can go in and look through all of your paperwork for the day. They can go in and look through those ballots. They are looking for anything that might change that vote. So they're going to make sure that each one of those ballots have initials. Because if they find two ballots that don't have initials on them for that other person, they're going to take their findings, go to court, and ask the judge to overthrow the results of that election and make them the winner instead of the other one. So it's really important that every ballot before it goes in this tabulator has judge's initials on it, regardless of whether it's the paper ballot or the touch screen. Ballot distribution station. Now, as you hand the voters their ballots, again, I'll go over this one more time, make sure you offer them this ballot privacy cover. You can't make them take it. You have a person comes in, you hand them the ballot, you offer them the privacy sleeve cover, and they said, oh, we don't need that. They go off to the booth and mark their ballot. They come up to the tabulator. They get here to the tabulator, and the ballot box judge is going to look over to make sure there's red initials on it. And the voter's going to put it in, go down to the coffee shop and say, that ballot box judge looked at my ballot, and they saw everybody on my ballot that I voted for. You can't fix stupid. You offered them a privacy cover. It was their choice not to use it. Because it's this ballot box judge's responsibility to make sure, again, there are red initials on every ballot before it goes into that machine. Spoiled ballot. I covered this a few minutes ago. If someone should spoil the ballot, whether it's from the touch screen or the paper ballot, they'll bring it back to the judges. You'll hand them the spoiled ballot envelope. They'll put it in the envelope, seal it. No one else can see how they messed it up. You'll mark on the application that they spoiled their ballot, they received another one. Then you'll give them another ballot and go on. You're never going to run out of ballots. If for any reason you do start to run low, call the clerk's office. They can always send you more. But keep in mind, as long as you have a touchscreen, it's impossible to run out of ballots. Each piece of equipment starts with a brand new roll of tape every election. And the roll of tape in this touchscreen will print out roughly 100 ballots. Okay? Always be kind. Now, at the end of the day, whether you have one spoiled ballot or whether you have 10, they'll all be placed into a larger envelope and be returned to the clerk's office. All ballots have to be accounted for. Track your numbers. Periodically during the day, at least once an hour, make sure that you're in balance. What does that mean? You're going to look down at your spindled applications. 25 people have asked for a Democrat ballot. 25 people have asked for a Republican ballot. You don't have any nonpartisan, so that's 50 people that have walked through that door and asked for a ballot. You're going to walk over to just your tabulator and look. 50 people have voted. Life is wonderful. You're going to go on. You're going to do that every hour. If you wait until 7 o'clock at night when you're all tired and ready to go home and you're off one, there is no way you're going to remember everything that could have happened during the day. So if you're in balance every hour, you're going to be in balance when the polls close. I was in Eureka a few years ago on Election Day. 10 o'clock in the morning, the judges went through, tracked their numbers, and they were one off. They had one more person that had voted a ballot than had filled out an application. And that happens. The first thing you're going to do is just check your numbers. This is where your problem usually is. Maybe you've rotated positions and you've gotten off a number, or Or maybe you were numbering and you skipped a number. Go back through these spindled applications and check your numbers. That's usually where you'll find your problem. And if you find you've numbered them wrong, cross them out, renumber them. Life's wonderful. You go on. Okay? How many people asked for a ballot should equal the number of people that had voted a ballot. Well, that morning, that wasn't their problem. Their applications were numbered correctly, so they sat there and thought about it. And they finally figured out that one of the election judges had gotten up and voted and forgot to fill out his application. So he went back, filled his application, got it spindled, and they were back in balance. But if they would have waited until 7 o'clock that night, they would have never figured that out. So be kind to yourself. Track your numbers every hour during the day. Judges Station 4, this truly is a station that somebody needs to be posted at all day long. The ballot box judge. Now, should the ballot box judge be leaning on the ballot box? No, you should have gotten a really good night's sleep the night before, and you shouldn't be tired. Step away from that box. Give that voter as much privacy as possible. The only thing you need to see are red initials on that ballot. Otherwise, the voter's going to do it all. They're going to come up and insert their ballot. And let me just run something by you to give you a scenario. This ballot happens to be blank, to let you know. Where did my red pen go? That's why you want to leave it right there. Good. Just because I've been preaching initialing ballots, I'll put red initials on it first. So this ballot is blank. Watch what will happen. Pretty smart machine. Oops! It will tell you that it didn't acknowledge it. Sorry. It says no selection was made. It's telling me right there on the screen that there's no votes on that ballot. But maybe it's my ballot. Maybe that's how I wanted to vote it. There's a section down here. It says accept ballot. I can touch that, put my ballot back in. And it'll accept it. You remember the old AccuVote had a button down here that the judges had to push? Well, now it's up to the voter to do that. You don't want to reach over and touch that because maybe they haven't decided yet that's what they want to do. So a voter will come up and put their ballot in. Let's grab another ballot. On this one, I'm going to overvote it so you can see what happens. For President of the United States, I'm going to vote for Molina. And I'm also going to vote for Redbird, that write-in. Okay? So I've overvoted that first race. Uh-oh. Let me make sure there's initials on the top. Okay, I'm going to put the ballot in. It says, this one says no, oh, it's because I used red ink. Don't pay attention to what I do. Pay attention to what I say. Oops. That does show you that. Oops. Well, see, we learned something, right? Oops. It says, President of the United States has been overvoted. Well, I didn't mean to do that. I can spoil it and start all over again. But maybe I just want to get out of Dodge. Maybe I just want out of here. So I'm going to say, accept my ballot. And I'm going to reinsert my ballot in there. Hey, my ballot has been cast. So how did the machine read my ballot? Every race that I properly voted will be counted. Every race that I've overvoted, I've lost my vote for that overvoted race. Pretty smart machine.
When it comes out as an error, do they read it themselves or do you tell them what they error?
It's actually all the voter. If it kicks back out and they kind of look at you, say, it's okay, just read this display. Now, if they can't read it, it's okay to step up and help them read it. But any conversation with that voter, be discreet. Everyone in the room doesn't need to hear that conversation. You don't ever want to do anything that's going to embarrass any voter. Okay? So the goal is they do it by themselves. But if they want help, they can even put the ballot in themselves. But if it's somebody on crutches or with a walker and they physically want help, it's not illegal for you to help them put it in. but the goal is for them to try to do it all by themselves. Good questions. So, going to make sure that no one interferes with the voter. The voter will place their ballot behind the secrecy sleeve cover, hopefully. The ballot is checked for judges' initials, and you'll add it to the back of the ballot that comes out of the touch screen. The voter will insert the ballot into the tabulator whenever there's a green light. See this sign? It says, "Attention voter, light must be green before inserting ballot." This has a green light, okay? If I put a ballot in and it hasn't processed it yet, it's going to be red. So make sure it's green before the next ballot goes in. Also, during the day, periodically check your voting booths to make sure that no one has left any campaign literature in any of them. I know it's hard to believe that anyone would do that on purpose. Yes? Well, you're SOL. Because once a ballot, did I say that out loud? Once a ballot goes into that machine, it cannot be opened. You cannot get that back out. Okay? So you hope that there's no election contest. That's why it's so important standing right there to make sure that every ballot is initialed, especially if someone is using this machine. Pay attention. You could, because it's not been cast yet. But once it's cast, you're done. Don't ask me. I don't want to know. Okay? Did I answer that well? Okay, good. Good question and a good answer. Auxiliary bin. Make sure that voting never stops from 6 a.m. until 7 p.m. Voting never stops, even if it requires you to turn the box around and let ballots go into that auxiliary bin. So, if you have 2 ballots in that auxiliary bin, are you going to be in balance when you track your numbers? No. Why not? Because when it goes in that auxiliary bin, it's not increasing the number on this tabulator. So, keep track of how many ballots are back there. Maybe a Post-it note, maybe a little note off to the side. A note to yourself reminding you that there's 2 ballots in that auxiliary bin, so that when you track your numbers, you have 50 people that have requested a ballot. You've only got 48 that have been tabulated, but you know there's 2 in the auxiliary bin, so you're in balance. Okay, so it's just keeping track of those numbers all day long. Possible problems. If the tabulator kicks that ballot back, always tell the voter to read the screen. It tells them exactly what the problem is. They've overvoted it. Now, how many of you remember the ballots that kick back when they're undervoted? Not this year. The law states that in a statewide constitutional race that is undervoted, the machine is required to kick it back. Why is that? Well, think about it. Who do you think made that law? Statewide candidates. They can't believe that anyone would go in and vote a ballot and not vote for them. It must be an oversight. So they're going to get that ballot back and try again. But it's only on statewide constitutional races that that law exists. And we have no statewide constitutional races on the ballot this year. So in 2 years, if the law doesn't change, then you'll have some ballots kicked back that it might say undervoted race. Again, if it's my ballot, I didn't want to vote for those individuals. All I'd do is hit that button that says accept ballot and reinsert it, and it would count my ballot exactly the way I cast it. But it's the voter doing that, keep in mind. It's not an election judge sitting there, hitting that white button for every single ballot that is undervoted. If the ballot can't be read, tell the voter to turn the ballot over and reinsert it the other way. What if a ballot just gets crumpled up on one corner? Well, it's not going to go into the machine. If they turn it over and feed it in the other way, it will smoothly go into the machine. Always be discreet. Now, I've given you a picture of that overvoted ballot so you can see. The voter has 2 options. They can spoil it and start over, but if they want to, they can cast it as is. The races that they overvoted, they've lost their vote on. But all of their other votes have been counted. They'll just push the button that says accept ballot and reinsert it. And then we come to provisional. What in the world are provisional ballots and why do we have to deal with them? Well, provisional came into place maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it was before we had grace period. You know, once registration closed, any of those people after registration, they were up a creek as far as updating their registration. And so this kind of filled the gap. But now, since we have grace period, hopefully on election day, individuals will just go to the courthouse, update their registration, and vote while they're there. But by law, provisional is still on the book. So what is it? It is to ensure that every qualified voter does get a chance to vote. It's to reduce confrontation for you at the polls on election day. It's to get a complete review of all information available, to correct any mistakes in the registration process, update voter records, and to get them registered for future elections. Now, there are 7 different reasons that will trigger a provisional ballot. They are: judges have no record of the individual, and they refuse to go see Jessica on election day. She's really a nice lady. Don't know why they wouldn't do that. Or the voter's voting status has been challenged, and you uphold that challenge because you know that address that they've given you is right next door to you, and they do not live next door. Or the voter did not provide identification when they applied for registration by mail. They come in on election day, and they still don't have any ID. Or a court order extends the time for closing the polls past 7 o'clock at night. Or the voter's name appears on a list of voters who voted during early voting, but they come in and said, "That is not me. I have not voted." Always call the clerk's office to verify that. Or voter comes in. It shows that they were mailed a ballot, and you question them, and they said, "Oh, I forgot all about that. That ballot is home on my desk." Smile and say, "Go get it." Because if they go get it and bring it back, it'll be spoiled, and they'll vote in person like everyone else. Okay? You want to try to avoid provisionals. That's truly the last resort. Or voter comes in. They attempt to register grace period with Jessica on election day, and they go in and they don't have any ID with them. Their only option is provisional. It's important that if someone does get a provisional ballot, that it's cast that they vote in the precinct where they live. So what are the supplies? Everyone that votes has to apply for a ballot, so they have to fill out an application. They fill out an application. You'll pull out your packet of provisional supplies. And again, it says, do not open before you call, because they want to make sure that this is the only option. So when you open that up, there are an affidavit, name, address, birth date. They're going to sign it in the box. You, the election judge, are going to fill out the bottom portion. Then you're going to hand them their ballot and a secrecy envelope and send them off to the booth to vote. But watch them. Tell them to go to that booth, mark that ballot, put it in the envelope, seal it, and bring it back to you, the judge. Then that affidavit that they filled out, it's a 3-ply form. That back copy is pink. You're going to tear it off, hand it to them. That's their receipt, and send them out the door. You're done with them. That receipt is pretty important because it explains to them that if they want that ballot to be counted, what they have to do, follow up afterwards with that additional verification or proof. Or, if when the election is over, they want to know if their ballot was counted or not. Each one of these forms are numbered. They can call the toll-free number, go to the State Board of Elections website, and they had one of 2 things they'll find out. Yes, their ballot was counted, or no, their ballot wasn't. And if it wasn't, it'll tell them why it wasn't counted. So that voter is left, they've got their receipt, they're gone. What do you do with all their stuff? Keep in mind, you have their application. Do you spindle it? No, because if you do, your numbers will be off, won't it? So you have their application. You have their affidavit. You have their ballot sealed in that envelope. You're going to put all of their paperwork in a pretty window envelope, and it'll stay together. Yet to be determined when the election is over if that ballot is going to be counted or not. It'll go in that separate securable container, great big wide envelope. Basically, it's the ballot box. Any voter that qualifies must be informed of their right to receive that provisional ballot. Just make sure it doesn't get anywhere near that tabulator, because once it goes in, it's a counted ballot. At 6:30, announce the polls will close in 1/2 hour. I had one rural township precinct that were so good at this. 6:30 at night, they'd go out and they'd announce, the polls will close in 1/2 hour to the cows in the field, because no one else was around. But they did what they were supposed to do. Remember to vote. How many of you work in precincts other than where you live? What do you need to do before Election Day? You need to vote. Why? Because on Election Day, you're going to be serving in that other precinct. You are there for the duration, from 5 a.m. until 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. Okay? So you need to vote before election. You can do it by mail. You can go directly into Jessica's office and vote in person. But don't forget to do it. At 7 o'clock, announce the polls are closed. Anyone that's in line, get them inside the building. Close, lock the door, and take down the sign. If they were in line at 7, they're eligible to vote, even if it takes you an hour to process those voters. Now, if they won't all fit in the building, one of the judges go out, stand at the end of the line to make sure that no one else gets in line after 7 o'clock. Procedures after the polls close. Again, this is a really organized county. Pull out your sheet for after the polls close. You not only have step-by-step instructions, but you have colored dots on everything telling you what goes where. Okay? Yay! It's pretty awesome. Now you're going to shut down the machines. Pull out your step-by-step instructions. Now, for your barcodes, you'll notice that I have an orange one here. You're going to have an orange one, but it's not going to be on this ring. Why? This orange one is used to shut the machine off. And they don't want you to actually shut it down during the day. So why do you, because you don't want to use it. So where do you think this orange one is going to be? In the back of your binder. She has a sheet that I was looking at earlier that's pretty awesome. A sheet all printed out with a picture of this barcode on it, where it goes into an envelope. Just like the old machine had an ender card, this is basically the ender card for that machine. You scan it in, and it shuts the machine down. Close voting? Yes. And it prints out a closed report. Did you notice that there's no totals on here? Why not? Because that machine's not holding any totals. It is just a glorified, expensive ink pen. So it's just a closed report. And I'll pass one around. It's got lines, so whenever you see a line, sign it. And where does that signed report go? In that black file folder in the correct category. Okay. So it says the session is closed. Now you'll take your keys. Even though you've told the machine to close down, this screen runs on a battery backup. The screen is still on. And you'll take the pin. On this key ring, you've got a funny looking circle pin. Okay? That's what it looks like. You're going to take this pin to close this down. Now, in the last election in Tazewell County, they've had these several years. You are not guinea pigs for this equipment. This equipment has been around a while. On election night, the judges called in and they said, we can't close the screen down. You're supposed to put the pin in the little hole. Well, they were sticking it in the hole that says headphones on it. But right below that hole is the hole that shuts the screen off. So you insert the pin, and it will close the screen off. When it shuts that screen off, you'll reach around the back and hit the toggle switch to turn it off. It's powering down the screen. You'll hit the off, and you'll close it up. You'll put your keypad, your headphones back into the compartment. Pull up the slide to set the screen down. Let me put it back up so we can play with it in a minute. You'll pull the cover off the suitcase, basically, from under the table. Put the hinges on, slide it over, put the latches, and lock it. And then you'll leave it in the polling place. You are not going to have to haul any of this equipment in anymore. You're going to leave it all at the polling place. So you put it back into shipping position, put the lid back on, lock it up, and that's where you're going to leave it. Now let's go to the tabulator, the ballot box. If you have any ballots in this auxiliary bin, you're going to open it up, take those ballots out, feed them through the tabulator, and you have one more shot to track your numbers. How many people asked for a ballot? How many people have voted a ballot? Life is wonderful when it matches. Now to shut the tabulator down. If you pull out your step-by-step instructions, it tells you to touch the hidden button. It truly is hidden. There's no button on there. But it tells you to put your thumb, your finger in that bottom left corner. And when you hold it there, see where it's at? The password screen pops up. What's your password? Shelby 1. You'll put Shelby 1 in and hit enter. And then you'll touch the button that says close voting. You want to close voting? Yes. Are you sure you want to close voting? Yes. 2 times it's going to ask you that. And then it will print out your summary reports. Okay? I'll pass a couple of these around. When you see a line, sign. I'll give you one. And I'll pass this one. Start it back here. Okay? That is the results of what has happened in your polling place on Election Day. You're going to print 3 reports. 1 copy goes into your file that's going back on election night. 1 copy is going into your ballot box with your voted ballots. What does that look like? You have a white box that when you pull all of those ballots out of the ballot box, you're going to put them in this white box with one of those tapes before you seal it up. Okay? And then the 3rd copy you're going to post on the wall of the polling place. So you'll print those 3 copies. Now what if you have poll watchers there and they want their own copy? They're entitled to another copy. What if you, the election judge, you want a copy of it? You can print you a copy. Print Jessica's 3 copies first, and you can sit there and print copies all night long if you really want to do that. But just keep in mind, every report that comes off that machine, every single one of you has to sign. So how long do you really want to stay there printing copies? Okay? So you have to print 3. Poll watchers are entitled to more, but you can keep printing them if you so choose. When you're finished, then it comes up, print write-in reports. Now for this election, you have no write-ins, so it's not even going to ask you that question. But I'm still going to tell you how to do it for the next election. When it comes up, you're going to say yes. Now, look at this little box right here. It says compress images. Compress means to make small. It's automatically going to print this report in small letters. But if I were you, I would unhook that box, uncheck it. Why? I'll pass some write-in reports around so you can see what the difference is. If you leave it checked, it's going to print out all the write-ins that people wrote on their ballots before they put them in. It's going to print you a report of every write-in that was done. Now this machine's pretty awesome. It takes a picture of that write-in line on every ballot. So if I have really weird printing, which I do, that's what's going to show up on this report. It's my printing. The printing of those individuals that wrote that name is what is showing up because it's captured that section of the ballot. So if I've left that checked and it's compressed, it's printed that write-in really small back and forth across that tape. But if I uncheck it, it has the same results, but it prints it really big up and down the tape. So you're going to get the same results either way, but be kind to yourself and to your eyes. Uncheck the box so when it prints it, it's up and down, really large, easy for you to read. And I'm going to pass these around together so you can see what the difference is. Small back and forth or really large up and down. Now, it says print 2 copies for each precinct. And again, if you have poll watchers and they want a copy, print more, but you've got to sign them all. And then it says shut down. Turn the tabulator off. Remove the power cord. Now, remove the TM stick. This machine, I can't say how wonderful it really is. Where is it holding all of that data at? I laid the screen down. Beside the screen, there's a little button, and the instructions show you this. There's a little hidden compartment underneath that screen. And you have a round barrel key. This round barrel key opens that compartment up. The cover comes off, and you see a little bitty thumb drive in that machine. I don't want to pull it out because it'll shut my machine down. But on election night, after you shut everything down, pull that little stick out. Immediately walk over to this folder that's going back to the courthouse. In the inside cover of this folder, there's a place that says put your TM stick, your little thumb drive, right in there. It's important that that gets back to the courthouse because that is the results of all of the votes cast on every ballot that went through that machine all day long. So you're going to pull that thumb drive out, Put the cover back on. Put this back down, and you're going to leave it all there. You don't have these 27 and 28-pound machines to take back to the courthouse. You're going to make sure that you've got the results on that thumb drive. You've got a list here of everything that needs to be in this folder, and this is what you're going to carry back to the courthouse. Now, also, all of your ballots that came out of that machine are in this box, along with one of the summary tapes. Okay? You're going to seal it. It's going to go in this blue bag when it's time to go back. Also, what's in there is all voted provisionals will go in there. This tells how to take the ballots out. Combined precincts do not have to separate their ballots. So if you have two precincts using this same machine, when you pull those ballots out, leave them together, put them in that box, and bring them back. Now, how about the ballots with possible write-ins on them? You don't have to look for them anymore. Why? Because that write-in tape that I just had passed around, that is the results of every write-in. You're going to fill your write-in tally sheet out from that tape. You don't have to go through those ballots and look for all those ballots that had write-ins on them, okay? If you do have write-ins, you're going to find out from the list in the book who are the valid write-ins, and you're going to go through them one by one to determine if all those write-ins that were on that tape are even valid or not. The tabulator said there were 2 write-ins. You printed the write-in report, and it shows 2 write-ins. Now you're going to go through them to determine if they were valid. So let's say the write-in's name is James Smith. If someone goes in and writes Jim Smith, are you going to count it? Yes, Jim is a nickname for James. My maiden name was Crookshank. Do you think anyone has ever spelled Crookshank correctly? Never. Does the name have to be spelled right? No. The name can be printed or written in cursive, and they had to have darkened the oval on that ballot, on that write-in line, or the machine would not even have acknowledged it, and it would never have showed up on your tape. Okay? So then you'll get your write-in tally sheets out. You're going to fill these out from that write-in tape. Okay? If you don't have any, you're going to write none across the form. And guess what Lisa has already done for you for this election? She has gotten your write-in sheet. She's writing none across all of them, but you still have to sign them. I'd clap your hands too. She's awesome. Or if you do have write-ins in a future election, you're going to list their name, their office, how many votes they received, and every election judge will need to sign off on that. And then pull out that statement of ballots. Actually, your version in this book is much better than what I have on the screen. It's pretty simple. How many ballots did you start with? How many are used? How many are spoiled? How many are defective? How many applications do you have? And how many are you bringing back? Pretty simple. That are voted. No. It's only accounting for those ballots that have been used, defective, spoiled, whatever. Yes, before you close that machine down, you're going to pull those auxiliary ballots out of the auxiliary bin, feed them through the machine, and one last time to track your numbers. Make sure you're in balance before you close the machine down. So, the statement of ballots, you'll fill it out. Make sure that you've accounted for what happened to your ballots during the day at the polls. And then fill out your expense sheet. What is this? Anybody know? This is what you get paid from. I have to tell you, there were some elections, it'd take me a week or two after the election to track judges down to get this filled out. Why? Now, I knew who worked because your names were printed 100 times all over these forms. I knew who picked the ballots up because I'd handed them out on Monday before the election. I knew who had brought them back because your names were on the receipts showing you'd returned the supplies. But I didn't always know of those returned judges who drove and how many miles you were to be paid. And I had to have every piece of information before I could pay the very first judge. So be kind to yourself and also to the clerk's office. Make sure you have this filled out before you come back on election night. And when you do have it filled out, where's it going to go? It's going to go back with those other really important papers on election night. Now, if you have a single precinct, you're in that polling place all by yourselves. Again, step-by-step instructions, where to bring it back, how to package it up. If you are two precincts serving in the same location, again, step-by-step instructions on what to do, where to put it, and how to bring it back. If it has a red sticker on it, it tells you to put it in the red bag at the end of the night. If it has a blue sticker on it, it tells you where to put it in the blue bag at the end of the night. And if it has a black sticker, it tells you to put it in the black folder at the end of the night. Yes. Pretty awesome. And then she even gives you flow charts with pictures of what all of those items are, what they look like, and where they go in that black folder. But did you notice something new that's been added? This is that little thumb drive that you've pulled out of that tabulator. Since you're leaving the machine there, you need to bring the data from that machine, that thumb drive, put it in the front pocket here, and bring it back. Okay, items to be returned in the blue bag on election night. It gives you, again, a picture. The voted ballots. Can't read it very well. Your tally sheet. Your write-in sheet that you filled that write-in tally sheet from. Your provisionals. And all of those you noticed had blue dots. They come back in the blue bag. What comes back of the results in that one envelope? Again, it shows you a picture. But each one of them has a red dot on it to tell you what comes back in that envelope, into the red bag. Voted ballots are sealed in the voted ballot box, returned in here. I just showed you. The unused ballots, spindled applications, all come back in the red bag. You're almost done. You're ready to finish this project. Complete and sign all forms. 2 eligible judges, 1 from each party, will deliver the supplies directly back to the courthouse and then on ultimately into Jessica's office. Now look at this cute little Republican and look at the cute little Democrat. Watch what they do. They return together in the same vehicle back to the courthouse. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the Republican pull up in one car and the Democrat show up 5 or 10 minutes later. Think about it. If for any reason there's an election contest and you have to go and stand in front of that judge, you want to honestly be able to tell him that both parties were in possession of those supplies from before the polls opened, during voting hours, after the polls closed, until everything was taken back and delivered to the clerk's office. Keep yourselves and everybody else out of hot water. Don't throw anything away. You're all in, you're all done, everything's turned in, you get home, I suggest you not call your neighbor and tell him they won. Why? Now, you might know the results that came right off this tape on this machine, but that is only the results of the people that physically walk through that door in your polling place on election day, right? How about all those people that have voted early, that have voted by grace, and those ballots are being counted at the courthouse? How about all those provisionals that are in the bag, yet to be determined if they're even going to be counted? How about all those vote-by-mail ballots that still have 2 weeks to come back? So when is this election ever going to be over? It can take up until 21 days after the election for everything to be finalized, canvassed, to have official results. Now, you see the results in the paper the next day, but also they say unofficial totals. It can take up to 3 weeks to have final results from any election. Clean up your mess. You have to mop the polling place before you leave? No, but try to leave it the same way you found it. Polling places are getting harder and harder to find, especially those that are handicapped accessible. So if you take care of someone's polling place, chances are they're going to allow the county to continue using it in the future. Your election authority needs you. Once you've been assigned to work at the polls on election day, do your very best to get there, but then life happens. People get sick, emergencies come up, and if something should occur, as soon as you find out you can't serve, who are you going to call? Jessica or Lisa. It's easier for them to find a replacement a week before the election rather than at 5 o'clock on election morning. Thanks for coming to the class today. Thanks for serving as an election judge. Give yourselves a hand for being ready, willing, and available. Do you have any questions that we haven't covered? Okay, before you leave, I hope you really will come up and play with this equipment. I only have one more thing. You'll notice I didn't give you a test today. Yay! If I can get everyone to stand up, you've sat too long anyway. One more thing. You needed to move. It's been 2 hours. Okay, is everyone standing? Close your eyes really tightly. Now open them back up. Now carefully do a 360-degree turn. Don't hurt yourself. Raise your right hand, make a fist, and pat your chest. As you leave this room today, if anybody asks you, what did you learn at an election judge class? You can honestly tell them the information you picked up here today. It brought you to your feet. It opened your eyes. It turned you around, and it touched your heart. Thanks for coming.